Weekly, GarageBand, GarageBand Weekly, GarageBand Weekly. Ooh. Need an answer to your question, John, you'll have a suggestion. He's a fountain of all knowledge. I think he might have gone to GarageBand College. What he doesn't know, we'll try and find out. So join the chat and give him a shout. Hey, John. Hey, John. GarageBand Weekly.
That's my entry. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to GarageBand Weekly. This is our weekly show all about GarageBand. Hello, welcome aboard. We are brought to you this week, as we are each and every week, by me. Yes, I sponsor my own show. You can jump on over to studiolivetoday.com/GarageBand. That's where you're going to find all the information that you need to know about everything to do with GarageBand. We got the quick guide there for just $10. We got all the free playlists and all the great communities you can join. Speaking of which, I was just chatting with the fine folks over at the GarageBand users Facebook group admin team. Yeah, we've got folks over there, Ron and Brian and Steve and Patrick and there's a cool people over there. Condi, I'm forgetting people, but you know who you are. But we were just talking about the fact that we've been doing this garage banding stuff for 5 years now, and we've kind of feel a bit like pioneers, and that's why I thought today we would talk about the future of GarageBand, because a lot of stuff has changed in the last couple of years. In particular, technology just won't stop. It's just going forward. AI is a big thing now. We had the cryptocurrency scare of 2020, which is thankfully behind us now. So there's a lot of things that have been going on, Web3, all of these sort of things. So what impact has that had on you and me and our ability to sit in our bedroom studios and create music using this wonderful thing we call GarageBand? Well, that's what we're going to chat about in the feature topic here today. Some news and notes, as we do each and every week before we get started. Number one thing I want to talk about is that Songtember is just around the corner. Can you believe it is just over a week away? So if you're not familiar with Songtember, what we do is this time of the year, it's kind of this quiet period between, it's kind of the end of summer for the folks in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's springtime just leading into the summer period for us here in the South. And we like to do this Songtember thing because before we get to the end of the year, we want to make sure that everyone's at least got one complete song that they've created, recorded, and released. So what we do is on the 1st of September, or Songtember as we call it, we say, all right, drop the flag. Let's all write a song. And here's the thing, Songtember is a bit misleading because you could do a piece of music as well. It can be instrumental. We just call it Songtember because song or piece or movement tember sounds more like a brand cereal. So we're just going with Songtember for simplicity. But we invite you to join. There's a page there, studiolivetoday.com/Songtember. We've got a big launch party coming up in just over a week's time. All the places you can interact there. And I'll be doing it too. I'm someone who doesn't just tell you what to do. I like to do it as well. So we will continue to do this. This is the 5th year, big year number 5 of Songtember. And as our wonderful moderator, Thomas says, you can check out all the Songtember stuff right there on the page. Let's say good day to the folks who are here live. We've got Mr. Tremor Bear. We've got Mark Bro. We've got The Mix Club, Andy Cal. Thank you for being here as well. Scrolling on down. So there's lots of folks having lots of chatter here. Future Phoenix coming in slapping drums. I know, right? Got to get on the drums. G'day, Rena. Hope you are doing well. Rena here. It's Pete here. There is one of the usual suspects over at the GarageBand users Facebook group. I was just watching. I'm going to embarrass him now, but I was just checking out that old video of ours, Steve, because I kind of got a bit nostalgic. And check out those two handsome gentlemen there. Steve in his murder basement, and me with the treadmill and the shop and the washing basket in the background. We were classy back in the day. I love it. Hello, Jade Star. I hope you are doing well. Scotty Babies here from San Diego, California. Thank you for dropping on in here. And anyone who I have missed, please say g'day here in the chat. Yeah, I know. We had hair, and mine wasn't even grey. Well, not as grey. Let's give it a little bit of a play here.
First share with the group, Duke Denver, and he had a kind of a story that he said it sparked a little
It was such quality. It was really good, and I love it because when I go back and watch these old shows, it gives me that warm feeling because we didn't really know what we were doing. We're literally using like the Facebook app on our phones and just pointing them at ourselves. We didn't have lighting. We didn't have professional microphones. We were just doing it because we were passionate about GarageBand and the community, and we just wanted to do it. I know we were so old school. We were almost analog. I like it. Thomas, yes, the GarageBand Users Facebook group is a great place to join. Look, if you don't love Facebook, that's fine. I don't particularly love it either. I'm working on I'm being scammed on the moment on Facebook. Someone who's a friend of mine, I got an invite to be their friend again. So it's one of those ones, one of those spoofing an account things. So I'm wasting their time as we speak because if you can do that, you don't have to. Just ignore them. Just walk away. But yeah, if you know what you're doing, or at least know how to keep yourself safe and protected, yeah, I'm just going to string them along for a little while. It'll be a bit of fun, a little bit of scam baiting every now and then. Doesn't hurt. Using VHS camcorders back then, right? I mean, I do have a VHS player right here under my desk. But that's a story for another day. Let's crack into the other news and note. Well, the only other news and note that I had for this week was that the ordeal that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks with the return of the microphone. So I'm still here using this. I still haven't purchased myself a new microphone because I got to do my taxes today, and depending how that works out will depend on whether I buy a new microphone or not. You know how it is. You know how it rolls. So we'll be looking into that. But no, I now don't have to name and shame the company because they got their stuff together. They finally said, yes, the microphone's broken. They've refunded my money now, so the system works. But will I be moving on and buying stuff from Amazon next time? Almost definitely. And if you missed it last week, I bought a microphone. It was a Rode microphone. Wasn't Rode's fault. Rode make good quality gear. I love my Rode mic stand here. But it was DOA, dead on arrival. Didn't work out of the box, so I got in touch with the company, and the return policy, let's just say, left something to be desired. Comparing it to Amazon and eBay and places that have a really simple return policy, yeah, not so good. But we're there and we're through that problem now, and it's just made me reiterate like the reason. Again, this is going to sound like an advertisement, and I guess it kind of is, but the reason that I send you over here to the studiolivetoday.com gear guide, the reason that I say to shop from the places that I put here, which is Amazon, which is Sweetwater, which is eBay, which is Thomann, is that all four of those places I know for a fact have excellent return policies and stand by their products. If say what you want about Amazon and eBay in particular, yes, they're big trillion-dollar conglomerate corporation type things, but they got that way because consumers know you can buy stuff and you're protected, especially if you're using things like PayPal. You have the protection of that. If you're buying from musicstore.com, you don't know. It could be good, could be great, but it could be terrible. And if they don't have those really clear return policies and you're buying gear, you're kind of at a bit of a hard end road there. Yeah, looking at a lot of people who are talking about Facebook. Look, yeah, all of these things it's about you. I say it's about utilizing what works for you. Like everything, like music, like GarageBand that we'll talk about in a moment. It's about making sure that whatever you want to do, that you're comfortable with it. But you don't have to worry about other people. So it's like the Android versus iPhone thing. Use Android. Be happy with Android. Love that you're giving money to Alphabet instead of to Apple, $1 trillion company instead of another. But don't hassle people that want to use something else. And it's the same with social media. I used to get on the bandwagon. Vertical videos killing everything. TikTok's the enemy. It's evil. And now I'm just like, you know what? If you're having fun, if it's not hurting anyone, go ahead. Now, do I have to worry about my children becoming addicted to the dopamine hits of all the different things and then the in-app purchases and the yada? Yes. There's concerning things. But fundamentally, yeah, unless in an open market, in a capitalist marketplace, which most of us live in worlds where those things exist, this is what we get. Oh, look, a rare microphone bump. I'm usually good at staying away from my mic. If you do have any questions, don't forget we are interactive. So yeah, all you need to do is stick a Q in front of your comment. I will be keeping an eye on the comments, and if any questions come up as we go through, I will go ahead and answer them as well. And I would agree with that, Scotty, that Apple does have a soul in Tim Cook. I'm a Tim Cook fan. I think that he does good things, but again, some people really dislike him and really think he's the enemy and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, if you look at a Tim Cook versus an Elon Musk, yeah, you can see where I'm going with that. So our feature topic today is about the future of GarageBand, and I've got a question for you right up front, which is, what do you think? What are some things that you think are going to happen for GarageBand and for GarageBand creating in the future? We'll start by giving a little bit of a backstory, a little bit of history, and then I'll dive into my thoughts on the current state of play, and then a little bit about what I think the future is going to bring for GarageBand, because it's interesting. A lot of things has happened. So since 2004, where Steve Jobs and always forget the dude's name, singer-songwriter guy, stood on stage and they announced GarageBand. So keep in mind that before that, there was a lot of different. So there was things like Logic, and there were obviously Pro Tools and Cakewalk and a lot of other digital recording apps. But GarageBand was a game changer. And when they announced and launched and released GarageBand, they made the biggest mistake of GarageBand's future. That also meant that a lot of people used it. And you know what it was? It was the name, GarageBand. GarageBand has a connotation of being amateur hour, of being sloppy, of being less than professional. Garage, but you don't say, "Oh, I'm just paying $200 to get front row tickets to this amazing GarageBand that I'm going to see on the weekend." Like it has those connotations. The other thing that Steve Jobs said at the very start is this is a music app for non-musicians. And again, those two things combined, calling it GarageBand and saying this is a music app for non-musicians, everyone just stuck to that. And that kind of tarnished the reputation of GarageBand to this very day. There are some people that simply won't touch GarageBand because they saw that announcement and they went, as a professional musician or as a music creator, GarageBand is not for me. I don't want to be amateur hour. I don't want to be in a garage band. I want to be professional. I will never use GarageBand. Since then, of course, GarageBand is now as usable and as able to make high quality music as any digital audio workstation. Why? Because it's ones and zeros. Because it's not about the actual software. It's about the quality of the music that you're creating and the songs and the gear that you're plugging in and recording onto. And that's it. Apart from that, it's ones and zeros. It's all 24-bit. It's all a 44.1 kilohertz audio. Whether you're recording it into Reaper or Fruity Loops or GarageBand or Pro Tools, it really doesn't matter. And I know every time I say that, someone's like, but what about the VST plugins? But what about the stock plugins you get in Pro Tools? They're all much better. But what about... Yeah, okay. There's some differences, but it's not this. It's not the giant gap that people think it is. It's like that. That's the differences between GarageBand creating and using any other digital audio workstation. So that is my point anyway. But yours may vary. You may have other things. It's now the basic free entry-level DAW. Yes, it is. And we'll probably continue. The future brought mini tacos. There you go. So you know what? But they're expensive now. Has anyone had... Man, food is expensive these days. It's all going up and up and up, isn't it? Thomas Christ says, within 5 years, there'll be a significant update that involves more than bug fixes. Sticking my neck out with this prognostication. Yeah, that is a challenge. That and the question we have is, because we'll talk about it in a moment, that since Logic Pro is now on iPad, as well as the Mac, isn't that a clear distinction now? Like, will Apple be investing? A lot of people keep saying to me, Apple are not going to do anything with GarageBand. GarageBand's dead. They're going to get rid of it. Don't necessarily agree with that. But, yeah, I think it will go away, says the Mix Club. Hot take there. Scotty Baby says it's accessible. Yes, it definitely is. We'll talk about that one. GarageBand is the gateway drug. There you go. It's the gateway into other things for Logic, potentially. Yeah, so that's it. It's the promo for Logic. It's to get you into it. It'd be called Bedroom Band. There you go. Should have been called Bedroom Band instead of that. They'll definitely push to Logic in terms of being a next point up. Logic is not for everyone, but GarageBand funnels them into Logic. Yeah, Absolutely. GarageBand is the hook to bring people into Logic, whether it's iOS or Mac. I don't think it will change much short or midterm. There you go. Yeah, and everything is free with GarageBand. Another thing that we'll be talking about in just a moment. Ricky Neal, hello to you as well. So I've got a few topics that I wanted to talk about here related to GarageBand. But before we do that, let's just sort of continue with that story. So GarageBand was released on the Mac in 2004, and it wasn't until 5 years later that we got the first version for iPad. And yes, it was available on the iPad. It did cost money. You had to buy it. It was, I think it was $4.99 or maybe $7.99 here in Australia. I remember paying a little bit of money to get that first version of GarageBand on iPad. I was using an iPad 4th gen at the time, or was it a 3rd gen? It all gets a bit cloudy when you get to my age. So GarageBand was released for iPad. It was then added to iPhone. So you could actually start recording true mobile recording on your iPhone with GarageBand iOS. And that was a bit of a game changer again, because people like me that were not Mac people were suddenly introduced to the world of GarageBand. I didn't use a Mac until like 2 years ago. I was all iOS. And even though I had a channel, like one of the most popular GarageBand iOS channels, I never used GarageBand on Mac. And that kind of gave a different, another way for GarageBand to sort of get out there to people. And people like me wanted something simple and effective and free and accessible and able to be used. And that's exactly what GarageBand gave us. And I've talked about this before, but the whole reason I started this channel was that I couldn't find someone that was going through step by step, here's how to create, record, and release music using GarageBand iOS. There were like folks like Patrick and folks like GarageBand and Beyond that were giving like tutorials and little tips and hints and bits here, but no one was going all in with GarageBand iOS. And I'm like, I'm going to go all in. So that's why in 2017, I created my first EP, which was called Recoil, and it was created entirely in GarageBand, almost entirely on my GarageBand iPhone 6s Plus. Plus, by that stage, I'd upgraded to an iPad Air 2. So I was using two fairly low-end devices. I was using GarageBand 2.1 at the time, which was the latest version that just added in things like automation and actual EQ and effects, visual EQ and things. So that gave me the ability to use GarageBand to do everything. But I was still a PC guy, and it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I actually took the big plunge and went into the world of Mac. And now, the most recent news is, of course, we now have Logic Pro, so we now have a quote-unquote professional DAW on iPad. Many folks will question that and say, but it doesn't do blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it doesn't do everything. It's version 1. Version 1.0 of any software is going to have bugs and limitations, and Logic Pro is absolutely no exception to that. So we're now at the point where here's the current state, that you can use GarageBand on your iPhone, your iPad, your iPod Touch. If you saw the thumbnail, like that's me holding up my iPod Touch there, on your iPad, also on any Mac, any modernish MacBook, Mac, iMac, you can use GarageBand on. And this creates a system where it is free. Now, why do I put quotation marks around free? Because you still have to buy a piece of hardware. But here's the thing. If you have the hardware anywhere, this is why I got into GarageBand, because I already owned an iPhone and an iPad, so I already had the hardware. So I know a lot of people, whenever I say GarageBand is free, I get the well actually crowd down in the comments saying, well, actually, GarageBand is not free, because every time you buy an Apple product, part of what you pay for that Apple product goes into the development of the free software that comes with that product. Sure. Agreed. Let's agree to agree on that one. But for all intents and purposes, it is provided without additional charge to anyone that has any device. And that makes it super accessible, which we'll talk about in a moment. So by just putting it out there to everyone and making it free, it adds a reason not only for why you want to buy those products, because maybe you want to buy a product just so that you can have iMovie and GarageBand so that you can start creating music and creating video. Or what a lot of people do is that they have the device already and then they see what you can do with it and they're like, I'm going to give that a try. I'm going to start using this because I have it anyway. The barrier to entry, it's not even a download. It's actually on your device when you get it. You have to physically remove it from any new Mac or any new iPad or iPhone. So it's got an absolute zero barrier to entry in that all you need to do is own an Apple product. Any Apple product you have bought in the last 5 years has had GarageBand installed and usable for free. Again, unless you're the early pioneers like myself that actually paid a few dollars to buy it, that's 2 mic whacks in one show. Then you've had it and you've got it for free. So I think the free thing is definitely part of it. And as Scotty Baby says here in the chat, I do everything on a $300 iPad. And that's the other difference. A lot of people say, oh, yeah, fine, but you got to buy a $2,000 iPad Pro with the M2 processor and blah, 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 blah. No. I resisted upgrading for the longest time. Those that have been around this channel for a while know my old trusty, the old red and blue iPad Air 2, that thing was a beast. That thing recorded my entire album, 2018, my album Selfish Aware, the whole album was recorded just on that one. AUV4 would make the devs pull their hair out, who just finally... Yeah, a new audio unit. And look, that's one thing that I think it's a fair point, that cross-compatibility is something that I just don't think the future is going to have. I don't think that we're going to get to the point where we're going to have full... I know that with Logic, they've got what they call round-trip compatibility, where you can create in the Mac and then send it to create in the iPad, send it to the Mac, and then send it back to the iPad. But as soon as you start adding in any Audio Unit V3 plugins on iPad or any VSTs or AUs on the Mac, then it does not become compatible. So there are things that won't work from that point of view as well. But yeah, again, you don't really need to have the latest and greatest to do that. Android devices aren't free either, last time I checked. And that's the other thing, nor are PCs. And the biggest argument that there used to be was that the PCs and Android devices are much cheaper, much cheaper than using a Mac or using an iPhone or an iPad. That's just not really true anymore. It still is in some use cases and for some folks. And as I mentioned last time, I think if you're buying a gaming laptop or a gaming desktop, of course you're going to buy a PC. You're not going to go buying a Mac, and you're going to probably spend less money to get the same specs. But if you're just buying a phone these days, if you want to buy a high-end Android phone, a Google Pixel and an iPhone, they're almost exchangeable in prices. A Microsoft Surface and an iPad, almost exchangeable. A decent laptop and a MacBook Pro, almost interchangeable. So unless you're at the real budget end of everything, like the free Android phones you get on a plan, or the $300 Asus laptops that are running the old the Celeron equivalent processors these days, then yeah, it's actually leveled out. So because Apple have found a way to make things more cost effective through their Apple Silicon, through their M1 and M2 chips, and at the same time, inflation and supply chain has pushed up the cost of things that using Intel chips and other things, and like the Android chips and the ARM processors, yeah, it's kind of leveled out. So that doesn't really become as much of a thing anymore. GarageBand started free, became $4.99, and then became free again. There you go. I got it December 26, 2014. There you go. So I didn't realize that it actually did that. AUV3 support is a good idea to have accessible apps for voiceover users to play out its effectiveness when paired with GarageBand. Yeah, indeed. Hello, Ronald M. Thank you for being here. Excuse me a moment. All right. So yeah, we talked about freeness, compatibility. Touched on it just briefly there, but having the backwards compatibility with quite a few devices. And we've seen this even with Logic Pro. People were surprised that Logic Pro can be run on your vanilla iPads. My daughters both have the iPads, like the last 2 iPads before the latest one. It's confusing. The 2 vanilla iPads from 2020 and 2021, they both run Logic Pro. So you don't need the latest and greatest for this sort of stuff. And the backwards compatibility for iPhone and iPad, it gets heat because it's like, oh, these things are being made redundant. But I still have that iPad Air 2. It still runs a pretty recent version of GarageBand. Not quite the latest one because it got left behind from iOS 16, but it's right up there. iOS 15.7 and GarageBand 2.3.12 or whatever it finished up at are still totally usable. And it means that you don't need a high-end device. In fact, like I said, I bought the last iPod Touch can run GarageBand without a problem. So yeah, you really don't need the latest and greatest to run that. And the compatibility, not only backwards compatibility, but cross compatibility is really good. Even though the frustrations that I have and other people have with GarageBand between Mac and iOS, and bringing it back to the future, the topic that we're talking about here today, the future of GarageBand, I don't see them making that a change. Like I know a lot of people say it would be fabulous if you could have things like VST and AU support on either GarageBand iOS or Logic Pro for iPad. I just don't see it coming. It's a different ecosystem, and I don't think the folks that say that understand how difficult it would be to pull that in. Now, in the future, with more universal apps and more cross-compatible apps that can be used with the Apple Silicon, with the M1 and the M2, I think in 5 years' time, when basically every currently supported device would be on an M series chip, so that's all, and look, the iPhones will still say A, but like your A16 is your M1, your A17 is your M2. They're almost identical, just one's the mobile version and one's the desktop/iPad now version. So I think once we get to that stage and they don't have to have this backwards compatibility support as much, then yeah, maybe we will have a lot more in the way. I know that's where Apple want to go. A lot of us thought at the time, when M1 was announced for the iPad, we got very excited because we thought that now we would have the ability to just, use iPad apps on your Mac and use Mac apps on your iPad and just run Mac OS on your iPad. And whilst that's technically possible, Apple have made it very clear, big line down the middle that says, here is your desktop experience and here is your mobile experience. Never the twain shall completely meet. And, I went on record saying that Logic Pro would never be on iPad as well. And I think the future is that there's not going to be a single hybrid device, which is like a MacBook Pro with a touchscreen. Prove me wrong, Apple. Prove me wrong. If you think it will, then go for it. Future GarageBand and Apple Vision. Yeah, what do you think? Let's just pause on that for a moment. Has everyone seen the Vision Pro, their VR, AR experience? Is that going to be the future of creating music? Are we all going to have big nerd goggles strapped to our face to create music? I don't know. I don't know if I would love that. I'm not one of the people that immediately vomits when you put a VR headset on, but I also can't wear one for more than about 30 minutes at a time. Maybe with all the advancements and things, it'll be different, but mild claustrophobia and mild sensitivity to motion means that, I like static things. I like a screen to be there in the physical space as opposed to in a virtual world. But you may be in a different place. Yeah, it would put GarageBand away from its original mission statement. And that's a really good point, is that GarageBand just wants to be a simple app. I think the reason that every time someone mentions a feature, and the reason that I've been harking on about the fact that in the future, there's a couple of features I want to come to GarageBand, and we'll close with what I think should be added, but maybe won't be when we get to the end. But the reason that I don't think you're going to get things like panning automation and more sort of complex things in GarageBand is that it would move away from that initial mission statement, which is to create a simple, accessible app that people can use for, as Leela says here, sketching out ideas. If GarageBand app could easily use samples and the piano roll would easily destroy all of the rest of the apps for us efficiency, and there was a slew of stock EQ and mastering options, it'd be good. Yeah, and there's definitely things that they can improve upon, but I think so. I think they're about as far along as they're going to be. When we look at what they came from and what they went to, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot more. But maybe I could be surprised. No goggles for this kid. Yeah. Can't walk as it is. Yeah, I don't know about the whole AR as well, the augmented reality. Yeah, maybe not. Don't know about VR for gamers. I think so, but not everyday use. Yeah, this is going to be your workplace. This is going to be your office. I don't know about that. Yeah, iPhone's always in my pocket. Exactly. Always got an iPhone with you, then you can always be creating. I was told by Apple that there is nowhere, including the brick stores, to get a lesser update. A lesser update? As in to go backward? I'm not sure. Maybe rephrase that question, Rena. Part of the GarageBand experience is the touchscreen interface. Yeah, and playing the virtual drums on keyboard and strings. And that's the thing. That's the differentiator between iOS, GarageBand, and Logic, and the Mac interface. And a lot of people that said, I use GarageBand on Mac or I use Logic on Mac, why would I want to use a touchscreen? Well, if you're asking that question, you probably don't want to. Whereas if you're using a touchscreen and people are like, to be real, you got to jump over and use a mouse and a keyboard, not so much, in my opinion. I stopped wearing goggles when I stopped flying biplanes. The old Biggles goggles. Yes. It's got some crops that need dusting. We're going off a little bit here. Right, cool. Let's continue. I've yet to plug an interface into my iPhone. Yeah, do it. It's fun. You do need a, say it with me, folks, a Lightning to USB 3. Hello, Kingers Music. Thank you for dropping on by. I was your GB instructor. Am I not still? I hope so. But no, look, a lot of people have. A lot of people have moved on. A lot of people got into GarageBand, learned all they could, realized they wanted to use something different, and then moved on to it. I know a lot of people that started in GarageBand that now use Ableton or use FL Studio or use Logic or unfortunately use Pro Tools if they really want to put themselves through pain. Sorry, Pro Tools users. But yeah, it can be a gateway, as I think someone said before. Hello, Soul Rack as well. Thanks for dropping on in. Let's talk about audio quality because I mentioned it briefly up front. I don't think there's any further that this is going to go in the future. I don't know, I'd put 50-50 as to whether we'll get, especially in GarageBand iPad, are we actually going to get, with the audio engine improving and new iOS versions, will it actually give you the option to go with anything but 44.1 kilohertz 24-bit? Maybe. So if you don't know what we're talking about there, that's your sample rate. So there's bit depth and there's sample rate. So 24-bit is the bit depth. That's what most people record at now. There's also 32-bit floating point that's supported by desktop DAWs that most mobile apps do not tend to support. But for the majority of people, 24-bit is great. And 44.1 kilohertz audio, that's CD quality. So that's 44,100 samples. So that's what your CD used to do. It used to be at 16-bit 44.1. For video, a lot of people record audio at 48 kilohertz, and things like Logic Pro on iPad, as well as GarageBand and Logic on Mac, support 48 kilohertz. And then if you go up, so with more storage being available and faster SSDs and higher storage SSDs, then you could record at 96 kilohertz or 192 kilohertz. I don't believe that there's a requirement for that. To Scotty Baby's point before, it would make GarageBand files much bigger, and it would add something that I don't think the vast majority of GarageBand people are looking for. So I don't think anyone said, this GarageBand's great, if only I could record at 192 kilohertz sampling rate. Yet someone using Logic Pro might actually say that. So I think in terms of the audio quality, it's going to pretty much be staying flat at the moment. ACBT says, I'm probably not returning to GarageBand anytime soon. Native Instruments Complete Control has native accessibility with the correct hardware, so I need a better thing to get that working. Let's talk about accessibility, shall we? Because accessibility has kind of two things here. There is genuine accessibility for folks with vision impairment and folks with mobility issues, and I think that Apple does a great job with that, from what I've heard. The VoiceOver app that folks who are vision impaired can use actually works pretty well. It doesn't do a great job with a lot of third-party apps because, unfortunately, not every small developer has the time or the effort or the inclination to make their apps as good for folks with accessibility concerns. But Apple, in general, definitely have a big focus on accessibility, and I think that will continue to be a thing. Not just for like a lot of people think, when they think accessibility, they think vision impairment, they think hearing impairment. Now, are there people with hearing impairment making music? Yes, there are actually, believe it or not. I've spoken to some people I've not spoken to them. I've typed to people. I've communicated with people who have actually had hearing loss or almost no hearing or complete lack of hearing, and they still are creating music. There were composers back in the day who didn't have great hearing but still were making music. So with the advancements in the technology with hearing aids and with the ability to help people with hearing challenges, that is definitely, and Apple are very much part of that. If you don't think this is a big Apple thing, look at AirPods and AirPods Pro. Look at what they're doing with the spatial audio and audio enhancement. All the audio enhancement options that you have in iOS actually do make it to the point, like right down to, you can actually boost your left ear over your right ear. So if you've got hearing loss in one ear, you can actually center your audio by making it louder on one side than the other. Little things like that maybe you don't think about, that are actually meaning that things like the GarageBand platform can work really well for those folks. The same with vision impairment, the use of voiceover to create music. There's heaps of folks right here. We've got Soulrack, we've got Acer. There's a bunch of folks. We've got Monique over on the GarageBand users Facebook group. There are a heap of people that make music just using the voiceover, which is amazing because it's a challenging thing to do. But like anything, practice makes progress. The more you do it, the better you get at. And the other thing is accessibility in terms of everyone being able to get hold of it. I think that's going to be a huge thing. Right now, if you could get yourself an iPhone 7 or an iPhone 8 for a couple of $100, you could get yourself a vanilla iPad or iPad mini that can run the latest iOS 16 for a $200 to $300, and you're in. Like, the barrier to entry is pretty simple. And then creating music, my kids jump into live loops and they're creating music. They also know how to use the tracks view because they're my kids and I taught them. So they can record things, they can loop. It's very intuitive. GarageBand is like playing Texas Hold'em poker. It's the thing that takes a minute to learn and a lifetime to master. I've spent half a lifetime and I'm still very far from mastering everything. But it does give you that accessibility that anyone can grab it and get started. Now, I've received feedback lately that says that that's a bad thing. And I'd love to get your view on this because the folks, the comments I get go something like this. There's too many people creating music now. It's creating too much competition. It's the, as Cory Doctorow says about a lot of things to do with the internet and to do with big tech, it's the enshittification of it. They're like, it's too easy for people to create crappy music and put it out there. It's bringing the whole thing down. Now, I personally don't think that that's the case. I think that having the ability, you can still pick and choose who you want to listen to. And the cream will still rise to the top, yeah. It's not going to be a yes, no, black, white kind of situation. But there's definitely a lot of folks out there that say that no, even though accessibility is good, folks shouldn't be able to have access and have the ability to access and create music. I, for one, think they should. But your mileage may vary. I'm just going to check because we've got some connectivity issues here at this end. I just wanted to check in and see if everything's still functional there because YouTube has had a few challenges lately with some of their live streaming stuff. So if you're watching and you're finding you can't chat or you can't be interactive, I apologize. It usually fixes itself and hopefully it'll pop back in just a jiffy. I'll check it at my end too here as well. What are we talking about next? Let's talk about sound packs, shall we? Yeah, so one of the things that GarageBand definitely has added a lot of over the past, and I think will continue to in the future, is sound packs. Now, we've seen a bit of a change with the sound packs over time. For a while there, we were getting more variety of the types of sound packs that we were seeing. So we were getting some guitar tone sound packs, some bass tone sound packs, some like world instruments were coming in there. I must say that in recent times, the types of sound packs that we've actually been getting have been very similar. We've had some trap type sounds. We've had some 808s. We've had 808s out the wazoo. We've had the sort of electro sounds. We've had the 80s sounds, the sort of new wave kind of sounds. So it has definitely changed in terms of what we're actually getting in there. And the number one thing that I hear from folks is, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be nice if we could be seeing things like what are people asking for? Like ukuleles and banjos and what else? Like a metal pack, a folk pack. And I just don't think we're going to get that. I think we're going to continue to get a whole lot. Oh, look, the chat is still coming through here. So it is coming through on my phone, but it is not coming through here on the on the StreamYard. We're having a StreamYard issue. So it looks like we're all good. Can you just give me a thumbs up in the chat if everything is working well? That would be great. And then I'll be able to see it on my phone here. But StreamYard has, after I gave it all the praise yesterday, we're talking about how good and how robust StreamYard was to some folks. And then it has dropped the ball. It has dropped its bundle here, and I can no longer see it. So do let me know. Again, I won't be able to see them or put them on the screen, but do let me know if there are things that you would like to see in terms of what sounds will be added to GarageBand. I think they're going to keep adding them. I just don't think they're going to be what you want. And maybe they are. See, here's the thing. we are different to the majority. We are by no means the majority of people when it comes to what GarageBand is trying to get at. They want to get new people in there and they want to make sure that they're capturing the popular sounds. The other thing I think that we're going to see is more connections with artists. So GarageBand, for better or worse, they're things that they've done with Dua Lipa, things that they've done with 17, the Korean boy band, what are they, K-pop band? Those things have actually been quite successful for them and introduced new things that people hadn't had before. So I think the sound packs are going to continue on. Instruments, which is sort of a subset of that, that is probably at the peak point now. I can't see them adding a brand new instrument. The current ones we've got with the world instruments, the strings, the guitar, I just don't think that there's enough of a call for that to be updated. I think they're very much focused on loops and beats and synth sounds, and they are the things that will be added over and above something cool, which is like a brand new instrument. I, for one, would love to see some new brass, maybe some new woodwinds, like it expand upon that oboe and clarinet and stuff that they've got in there, some flutes and things. There's opportunities there, but I can't see it happening. Personally. Let's check the chat that I can do here on my phone for a moment. Yeah, it is still working. Cross-country ballroom dance. There you go. Yeah, let's get some country. A country pack would be awesome. We'll finish off these couple of things, and then I might do a quick reset just so I can get my stream back up and working properly. Popularity. What's going to happen in the future with the popularity of GarageBand? Well, we have actually seen some interesting things. If you go to Google Trends, I haven't done this for a while, but it's really interesting to track GarageBand in Google Trends. So for now, I'm looking at this right here for Australia, but we can actually track the usage of GarageBand in terms of a search term. So if we bring up the screen over here, so you can do this in the past day, you can do this for 2004 to present. So let's look at GarageBand from 2004 to present. Well, look, what have we got here? So these are the interest over time for GarageBand. And if anything, you can see there that we had a big peak there right around, I don't know, yeah, April of 2020. So here's where it went. So this is GarageBand coming out here, 2011. This is when we got it on iOS. Kind of trails away. There was a global pandemic and everyone's like, oh, I need to learn GarageBand. That was kind of good for people like me that ran a GarageBand channel. And then it's kind of fallen away. And now it's at a lower level there. Let's compare that to Logic Pro and add a comparison there. This is always just fun to do, just for fun. Logic Pro is ticking along there. Same sort of thing here in May of 2020. I was surprised that we didn't get a Logic Pro peak around about the time that it came to iOS. But again, this is all in Australia, and this is all very very basic. If we go to the worldwide here instead of Australia, you get a different kind of view, but the same sort of thing. And you can see there the peak there for Logic Pro. There was a little peak there, but that was in February 2022, so that wasn't even when it was released. But over time, like, it's not like it's exploded and it hasn't fallen away, but you could argue that there's a definite trend down there in terms of people that are actually searching for it. Now, is that great news for people that run channels devoted to GarageBand Logic Pro overall? Well, no. But you got to keep in mind that this is compared to the fact that there's a lot of new things like BandLab is now available. FL Studio is a lot more popular. The popularity over time of overall home music creating is actually increasing. But just like music, just like the more music you have out there, the more diluted it gets. It's the same with DAW. So GarageBand and its popularity is sort of slightly sliding down because everything is sort of slightly sliding down, if that makes sense. So I think there'll be enough people continuing to use GarageBand, but it's not like it's a boom. It's not like we're going to see the big GarageBand boom of 2025 or something, unless we have another global pandemic. Oh no, I don't want that to be a soundbite. Because in 2025, when it comes, I'll be like, oh no, I did this. Last thing I want to talk about here related to the future of GarageBand, and something that I think is actually super positive, and because of things like that, because of the fact that we will be regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum or your beliefs, we will be living in an energy-constrained future. However you look at it, if you say that we should continue to use fossil fuels for as long as we possibly can, there still reaches a limit there. Yeah, that's a finite resource. The cost of energy production is going up because of inflation and because of a lot of other factors to do with the addition of renewable energy. So we are all a lot more constrained by how much energy we can use, and we're all constrained by how much we can spend on all that energy. And why is this important when it comes to GarageBand? Well, the energy that this uses, or that the iPad uses, or that my Mac M1 with no moving parts and all of its own custom Apple silicon is actually much less than a PC, a desktop PC, even a 4-track recorder back in the day that had to run and had transformers in there and had to spin a piece of tape, than a studio, than outboard gear. Like, outboard gear sucks in. Like, you know, a valve amp may sound amazing, but that's sucking in some juice, my friends. So the ability to use things like virtual amp sims, like virtual rack gear and compressors, yeah, think of the footprint. Think of the electrical use and the energy footprint of someone that has an old school studio versus someone that's using an iPad or a Mac as their basis and doing everything in the box. It's night and day. In fact, you'd have to do it at night so that you can get your off-peak electricity if you were running a studio, because the energy cost to run this real quote-unquote gear is huge. So I actually think that the future of mobile creating is going to be good, because we are going to be needing to find every possible way we can to reduce the amount of energy we're using. Now, is that just, you know, lefty, greeny, hippie Pete saying stuff that's going to, you know, be what he wants to happen? Yeah, probably. But I think it's reality. And I think if we don't think in terms of that, we're not going to be creating much music. Because it's one thing, it's weird, like Rage Against the Machine walk into $1 million studio using megawatts of power to create their album about how we're destroying the world. And it's like, you know, irony shouldn't be lost on you that a lot of the energy that's being produced to go into powering your amplifier, Tom Morello. But being Tom Morello, he's probably actually got like his own wind farm that powers all his amps out the back of his house. Wouldn't put it past him. I love you, Tom Morello. So, yeah, this was more just my future thinking and my excuse to have a little bit of a rant about where I think things are going and what the future may hold for all of us. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to jump out of here. You're going to get a blank screen for about 30 seconds because I just need to reset and get this StreamYard back up and running so that we can finish off the show and answer any questions, because I can only barely see your questions or any comments down here on the screen, and I would love to be able to bring them back up. So stick with me. We'll go blank for a second, but we'll be back in a jiffy. In fact, I wonder, can I play? I think I tried this before. I'm going to play a Thomas Christ tune for you, just as some background music while I jump out, and we'll be back in a jiffy. feeling. I got the feeling within me. I got the feeling that I've got my comments back, and I'm feeling a bit better now. At least they were working for a couple of seconds. There's definitely a small issue here because I came back in, they were working, and now they're gone again. So I apologise for that. It looks like we're not going to be able to have your comments on the screen because they're just not flowing through anymore. But it does look as though the streaming is still working. So if you do have any questions, I'm going to be rude and bring them up here on my phone and answer them here. But I did get a couple of questions during the week that I wanted to throw out and just talk about here before we finish up the show. And I don't have it listed up here at the moment, so I will jump over to here. I got asked about mastering through the week, which is that Final Touch, which is the app that I used to use for mastering, is no longer with us. And people have been asking me lately, what do you recommend? What should we use instead of Final Touch? And the first thing I'll say is more recently, I've been using BandLab and BandLab's free mastering, which is pretty darn good. If you haven't checked out BandLab's free mastering, go and join up to BandLab, and you can either create in there or just upload your song. So just get your WAV file of your song, put it in there, and you can do mastering in there. You can set the different type of mastering so you can really crush it, or you can sort of dial it back a little bit. So that is sort of a free option. Logic Pro has some great mastering tools in there, has a really simple, easy to use limiter, and you can get really good control with your metering. I've shown that in previous videos too. So even if you don't want to sign up to Logic Pro long term, say you're working on a song or an EP, you can always sign up for a month and then cancel and then just use it for your mastering. And finally, there's things like Grand Finale 2 or Audio Master Pro, which are other apps that I would recommend if you want that sort of medium. So basically, if you want it to be simple and free, go BandLab. If you want it to be expensive and complex, but give you a lot of options, go for Logic Pro. If you want something in between, in the middle there, then check out some of the apps like Grand Finale and Audio Master Pro, or join Jade Starr's Patreon because she does mastering. She does free mastering. Just like GarageBand is free, Jade's mastering is free, meaning that you get it included if you become a patron of Jade. She will do some mastering for you. The other question I got was about plugins not working. Now, I'm going to bring up the email here because I'll finish with this, and if anyone's watching, again, because I can't see the comments very well, if anyone's watching and wants to leave a response for this user, then please go ahead and put that down in the comments below, or put it here in the live chat that I can't really see. So this came from Arnie, who's had a quickie for the GB Master. He was mentioning that he's using a MacBook Pro M2 with Ventura, and he wants to use TuneTrack, Easy Keys, Easy Bass, Easy Drummer plugins in GarageBand. But when he's trying to load them, he gets onto a track. It doesn't show up with the GUI, so the graphical user interface doesn't show up, and he gets a red or orange exclamation mark, and then just the plugin parameters, but without the actual interface. And he's asking, what is he doing wrong there? So unfortunately, I responded and said, I don't use GarageBand Mac that much, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. And I did send him over to the GarageBand users Facebook group, or maybe to go and ask Patrick at the GarageBand Guide, because he might get a better answer over there. But it's something I thought. I said, look, I'll throw it out here on GarageBand Weekly, because someone may have a simple answer. They may go, oh yeah, you're just doing this, or all you need to do is X. But I said to him, look, as long as it's an AU plugin, or an audio unit or a VST, and it's standard, it should be supported. But as someone that I haven't used I used to use, was it Superior Drums or one of those? I used to use drumming plugins, but that was back in the Reaper days. That's how long it's been since I've used like VSTs and AU plugins. So I wasn't the one to answer it, but I said I would pop it out here and see what folks had to say. That is going to do it. I'll just check if we have any final questions here. Thank you. Yes, thank you to Thomas for putting links to the Patreons in the chat. Patrick has a video on that, does he? Great stuff, Mark. If Patrick has a video on that, maybe I'll go and search for it. But I wasn't aware of it, but it's obviously something that it can. Problem, and maybe it's a VST support issue, because I know that Logic supports VSTs. Maybe GarageBand doesn't support VSTs. FabFilter, yes, FabFilter is great too. I don't use FabFilter much. I should. I hear a lot of good things about it, but I don't. All right, this is going to be too annoying, like having to talk to you and look at the chat on here. So we are going to finish up, but we're we're only going to go for another 5 minutes maximum anyway. So I did want to tell you a few things that this is the last show for this weekend, but we've already got set up shows for next week. We have Your Music Live, of course. We'll have a happy hour. I'm doing some rockin' tunes for our happy hour. The podcast will be happening on Friday morning or Thursday evening, afternoon, depending where you are in the world. So make sure that you tune in for those. Don't forget about Songtember. Jump on over to studiolivetoday.com/Songtember and you'll be able to get all the latest and greatest updates and information for everything over there. And all that is left is for me to say thank you for being here. Hit the thumbs up, guns up button down below. And remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, keep creating. And I'll see you next time right here on GarageBand Weekly. Bye.